should they? Joining me now is Dr. Nick MaGuire from the Psychology Department at the University of Southampton. We're happy you're here.
Thank you very much.
Please define happiness for us, though, in this context.
So, happiness is a complex and also very simple thing. Happiness is defined as, in terms of being asked, are you happy? Were you happy yesterday? How happy do you feel today?
When the psychologists like you like us to look at a range of happy or unhappy faces, don't they? So which one best describes... Well, is that what's going to happen from the politicians, do you think?
Well, the way we'd ask it is on scale. So out of 10, how happy were you yesterday would tend to be a weight. That's the way
some people always say 2, some people always say 9. It's just the...
That's the way the Office of National Statistics measures it. Okay. So back in 2010, they decided that GDP wasn't a great measure of productivity within this country, or it should be augmented. And so they started measuring 4 things. They started measuring happiness, sense of satisfaction, a sense of worthwhile, how worthwhile are the things that you're doing, and how anxious are you, all on that kind of 1 to 10 scale. And it's very interesting how things on those measures seem to be kind of creeping up, but very slowly, kind of at fractions of percent year on year.
Is it clear what governments need to do to improve all those measures? OK,
so 2 things. One of the things within the workforce and within work, certainly there's very good evidence that productivity seems to be related to staff satisfaction and proxies of happiness and well-being.
Oh, OK.
So the happier you are within your workforce, the more attached to the organisation you tend to be, the greater input you put into customer satisfaction, and the higher the productivity is. So from an economic and a productivity point of view, yes, we should be focusing on those things. And then the other thing that is really interesting is a strong negative relationship between wealth diversity and general sense of well-being within the world. So if you look at the countries where the wealth diversity, the gap between rich and poor is smaller, they tend to be happier countries.
But I think Finland was quite high up, wasn't it, on that measure, because there's less wealth diversity, and they're also saying they're happier, but they have a high suicide rate, so there's something not quite right there.
Well, I think you probably need to separate out the levels at which you're looking at that. So you can look at population happiness, but then the suicide rates may be related to individual factors. And of course the 2 are entirely related. So some people are just happier than others. It could be genetic factors, but also that is going to be a massive interplay between the social environment and the work environment and the way in which we configure our economy, which then filters down.
Do you think, as a professional in this area, that politicians are going down a good route by going towards this rather than GDP?
Oh, absolutely.
You like the sound of it? Yeah.
So there's good evidence that if you really want to take your economy seriously, you need to take these things into account. One of the things that we need to be very careful of is increasing wealth diversity. So the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, cite wealth diversity as one of the biggest challenges, economic challenges, that we've got back in 2015.
Right. Yes, we're levelling up. Are we levelling up to make us happier, or are we levelling up to put more money in our pockets? Paul, first.
Well, I think if you look at what this government has done, we are doing all we can to make sure that we have a strong economy with happy people in it. So look at the income tax threshold. We've taken more people out of tax, more money in their pocket. We've made sure
you're going back to money.
No, but we've made sure
that was not the point.
That people have more money in their pocket, they're a bit happier. But it's very important that we have businesses, and I think they are cottoning on to this agenda, actually, that businesses that do put those systems in place at their workforce to make sure they are happy. So my old job, we used to have bring a dog to work day and things like that. And I know that sounds very cliche, but a number of those things are now being done within business to make people happier at work. And having a happy workforce is really important for productivity.
Right. It could be seen possibly as a distraction, moving the goalposts, because maybe we are, there are more rich people, more poor people, all the rest of it.
Absolutely. I think broad statements like people having more money in their pocket when we've got huge use of food bank and loads of people within the benefits system really struggling to survive is not helpful, actually. But I will say...
There is more money in people's pockets because tax rates have been cut.
OK, but are more people as comfortable in their daily lives? I don't think so.
Right.
People are living in poverty.
Which is Nick's point, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If they don't feel better about that money, or they're looking at other people around them.
Absolutely. But what I will say actually is the fact that we're talking about happiness and well-being is brilliant. The fact that we're talking about mental health can only be a good thing, and hopefully it means that things can improve and the government will take it more seriously.
Do you think politicians are picking up on the right things as an academic in this area?
So, I'll give you an example of this. Blue Monday, it turns out, isn't a thing. It was...
it's a media thing, isn't it, as ever?
Well, actually, it was a holiday thing. So a guy called Cliff Arnold, who's a US psychologist, was commissioned by a travel company to come up with an equation which, interestingly, pointed to a date when we seem to be booking holidays most. In order
and it was paid for by a travel company?
It was paid for by a travel company, yeah. Chris Arnold himself has apologised for it, which is
I'm glad about that.
So the point here is stuff that looks a bit like science often isn't, and we need to be paying attention to the science and the figures that we get. And if there is a plea for government, it's make use of the scientists.
Actually, use scientists, use the proper statistics. Thanks for coming in and telling us about it. Fascinating.